Why do some people stay the course to accomplish great things and others don't? What is that indefinable quality that keeps high achievers going no matter what obstacles in the path? You might think that it's because of their talent or some special qualities they have, but what if the answer is more basic than we think? Today we will dive into grit, the perseverance it takes to stay the course. And to do that, we will take a trip to the woods, yes, to learn the secret of grit from one of nature's most majestic survivors, trees. We'll also talk about Beethoven, our classic hero, who has much to teach us about grit. What did he know? And lastly, I will take you into my practice session as I roll up my sleeves and have to exercise grit through a perilous practice session at the piano as I get ready to record the Appassionata Sonata. Join me for a fun episode. Welcome to Music to Compose You, where the timeless melodies of classical music intertwine with narratives of personal transformation. Join me each week at my Steinway piano on a journey through the symphonies of life. We explore how the power of music shapes our stories, ignites our passions, and leads us towards profound inner growth and physical healing. From the gentle cascades of a Bach prelude to the triumphant crescendo of a Beethoven sonata, each episode will resonate with the melodies of our experiences, inviting you to discover the transformative magic of classical music. Did you know that some trees are over 5,000 years old? Yes, they don't age. If there is ever a symbol of grit, it's the tree. Trees have a mystery and resilience. Like the poet Mary Oliver wrote, "Good timber does not grow with ease. The stronger wind, the stronger trees. The further sky, the greater length. The more the storm, the more the strength. By sun and cold, by rain and snow, in trees and men, good timbers grow." Today, I am feeling like a weary tree. I'm feeling the wind against me. I'm feeling that resistance kicking in. I'm sure you've felt resistance too at some points of your life. The thing is, all of us will at some point experience this thing called resistance. And the funny thing is that it seems to go hand in hand, oddly enough, when you're aiming to accomplish something great and positive in your life. Resistance holds you back like an anti-gravity device. For me, the resistance today that is holding me back is that I want to record Beethoven's Appassionata Sonata, but there's this inertia holding me back, and it's super frustrating. But one thing I've learned is that behind resistance feeling, there is always an underlying reason. It's usually something psychological lurking in the background. I call it hidden strings. Hidden strings are the reason why resistance shows up in your life like an uninvited guest with dirty clothes on, a filthy mouth, and muddy sneakers, and won't get off your proverbial mental couch. Hidden strings are the mysterious emotional, psychological, and spiritual forces that run your internal programming. I've been struggling with the opening of the Appassionata Sonata, and today I'm taking you inside of what my process looks like in my practice room. But for now, I'm going to clear my mind with a walk in the woods. And as I do so, I am reminded of the Beethoven tree. Beethoven tree, you might ask? Well, it's one of a series of photographs that the composer Ernest Bloch took, where he photographed trees that reminded him of the composers he loves, such as Mozart, Bach, and Beethoven. And this is how his Beethoven tree looked. You could see it's muscular and emerging. You could feel the struggle of that tree breaking through and the majesty. Bach and Beethoven both found refuge in nature. Bach was a Jewish composer whose music you are hearing now. He was born in Switzerland in 1880 and became one of the most significant composers of the 20th century, known for his works blending elements of Romanticism, Impressionism, and Jewish music traditions. Bloch's interest in the camera also led him to meet photographer Ansel Adams and Alfred Stieglitz. Nature was Bloch's refuge. In fact, he got so wrapped up in trees he would feel like he was communicating with them. He talks about the soul of trees. In a letter he wrote, he got so emotional he lay down and cried. He would blend with nature. He was working on this piece we're listening to now called Sacred Service, trying to reach a very deep and universal state. And he says he himself at that point became a tree. He was communing with nature, with the camera, to that depth. I'm feeling like walking into the woods to find my own version of a Beethoven tree. But first, practice. Start with one line of music, and as a practice for recordings and just general practice, I like to do a small chunk and listen back. That way I can be subjective or objective and evaluate, make any corrections, and slowly chisel that way.
1 hour later.
All right. Let me re-record the opening again. I wrote here in my notes that it should sound like a sheet of ice in hell, the opening. A sheet of ice in hell. Oh, that's a crazy thought. All right, let me see if I can make it more cool, slick. Listen to the left hand, Margaret. Listen to those chords. Listen, chords. I don't like the way that ends. It sounds jerky. That sounds too sharp. If you kind of let go one note at a time, sounds a little bit too murky. Better. Okay. Got it? Left hand comes off first, then the right hand. So it doesn't sound too staggered. All right. Nice. It's these little things that make me happy. That was too long. Oh! Except I didn't like the trill. All right. When I start to get this way, I think about the words that my teacher said to me so many years ago. He was working on a piece of music with his teacher, who was named Mindru Katz, a really phenomenal pianist from Romania, about the turn of the century. And literally, he talked about how they would spend 2 hours on one measure, to get it right, especially the opening measure. And so, yeah, if it takes 20 hours to get it right, it takes 20 hours to get it right. It takes the time it takes. Although I sometimes get really hard on myself with the time it takes to learn things and to really polish things. And I've gotten to the point that I realize that pieces of music stay with you and grow with you and change and transform with you. Because Beethoven himself said that he was unhappy with the way most pianists played his sonatas. So that doesn't bode well. And I guess the argument could be made that the pianos at that time just didn't have the sonorities that he wanted. But I think it's more than that. I think one has to go beyond the notes, go beyond the notation, go beyond what we see on the page and get into that energy where Beethoven was at. Music is so terse at times. As a musician, as a pianist trying to interpret it, it's sometimes like the notes versus you. I'm feeling the struggle. It's an internal tumult, one that has no peace because it could never be perfect enough. I'm feeling a sense of not being able to live up to Beethoven's piano music and his own frustration that he expressed that pianists were not able to live up of his vision of what this music should sound like. Maybe finding my own version of the Beethoven tree as Bloch did would help me unblock, no pun intended, and connect more with the message in the music. I'm here in the woods, and although it's not Germany, I'm thinking about the walks that Beethoven took. Imagining that every single day, no matter what the weather was, he would take 3 to 4 hours of walks. He composed so much music. He had so much happening in his life, but yet 3 to 4 hours to spend outside communing with nature was something that was non-negotiable to him. And as I'm listening to the early evening bird songs and a little storm has just passed, there's this sort of tranquil feeling in the air. It's super hot July. You can still hear some rumblings in the distance. And the idea of Beethoven and what he gleaned from nature, what he gleaned on these walks, the sounds he heard, and how he translated those into music is something so poignant, so extraordinary. Time to slow down and walk and think and be and create and invite in the power and wisdom of nature to help with whatever is happening in life. Decisions that need to be made. Somehow, nature proverbially clears our head. These walks clear our head. They give us a new perspective. They unite us with the higher power, with the power of nature and God. And trees especially, being the silent witnesses of our days. They see our history. They have heard our conversations. They have seen our battles. And this idea of the Beethoven tree, an invitation, you hear the music, the struggle in Beethoven's Appassionata. One can search for the Beethoven tree, a tree that is emblematic of that. I just saw a really interesting tree that had so many vines around it. It was reminding me of Beethoven feeling almost strangled by the circumstances, but yet growing in spite of it. Let's go and find a Beethoven tree.
For some reason that orange sticks out at me. So bright against the green.
I think I found the Beethoven tree. These vines that entangle around this tree feel very Beethovenian to me. Just like the tree fighting for existence, the grit was in creating for Beethoven, despite less than perfect conditions. A tangled mess was his life, and sometimes we have to create in the tangled mess. His circumstances is far from perfect, but he's going to stay the course anyway.
So I thought I would go back to one of my favorite biographies of Beethoven, the Maynard Solomon, and read excerpts from that suicide note that Beethoven wrote when he was about 28, 29 years old. And it's so poignant about the struggle. And in it, he says that he's born with a fiery temperament, loves to be with people, and is a social guy. But now he is saying that if I approach near to people, a hot terror starts seizing upon him. And the deafness is making it difficult for him to interact with people. He goes on to say, what a humiliation for me, and then makes a statement. It seemed to me impossible to leave the world until I had brought forth all I felt was within me. So although he says, I still am going to go on and live, this is so strange because it's a suicide note. He's basically saying goodbye. He says, as to his brothers, Carl and the nameless other one, he says, as soon as I am dead, if Dr. Schmidt is still alive, ask him in my name to describe my malady, and so on. So he's saying, I'm basically dying, but I'm not. It's so weird But then, in light of this, the author, Solomon, makes a really interesting observation. He says, when Beethoven wrote the words in this letter, "Thus I bid thee farewell," is a leave taking. It's saying goodbye, which is to say a fresh start. Isn't that really interesting? So Beethoven writes a suicide note saying goodbye, I'm out, but I'm not really going anywhere, but I'm completely changing. He also recreated himself with a new guise, self-sufficient and heroic. He literally got rid of his old self and he put on his new self.
Action eliminates stress. It isn't suffering that leads to hopelessness. It's suffering you think you can't control. That's Angela Duckworth, the author of Grit, The Power of Passion and Perseverance. Now I can play the piece because I have refocused from perfection to oneness, communing with the music. Here now is a fresh approach to one of my most beloved pieces, the Appassionata Sonata of Beethoven, Opus 57, first movement. Take 2 symphonies and call me in the morning. Those are the words expressed by Elena Manis in her book, The Power of Music. My friend, let me ask you a question. Have you been using the power of music in your health and wellness journey? If not, then there's no better time than now to jump in. Because we live in a modern time that is filled with noise, where finding peace and clarity can sometimes seem impossible. However, by tapping into the notes of classical music and the timeless messages of wisdom found within, we have a powerful transformational tool that we can use today. But you might be thinking, well, classical music has never been my thing. How do I connect to it? How do I listen and actually like it, engage with it, and have it be a reflection of my feelings and emotions? Welcome to the Music to Compose You podcast. Here we connect the dots, bringing together the beautiful masterpieces of classical music, the stories behind the compositions, and the composers that wrote them. The benefits of classical music are sky high. From reducing stress and anxiety to boosting concentration and creativity, classical music harmonizes your mind and body, elevating your everyday experiences. And you can try it right now. Feel the soothing melodies wash over you, improving your mood, enhancing your cognitive abilities, and promoting restful sleep. Let the melodies of Mozart, Beethoven, and Bach be your companions on a journey to wellness. Download Sound Sleep, a collection of soothing piano masterpieces that soothe your nervous system and harmonizes the brain, creating an atmosphere of peace just perfect for bedtime. Try it by going to musictocomposeyou.com, and while you're there, be sure to join the newsletter where I share the latest behind-the-scenes footage of the podcast and access to special events, concerts, and goodies reserved just for subscribers. So thanks so much for being part of the Music to Compose You family. We are embarking on a fun journey. I'm so happy you're here for the ride. Let's let our soul song sing and see what this music reveals to us about ourselves.